There's a language older than words. It speaks in the flutter of your heart when you feel misunderstood, in the ache that settles in your chest when you're surrounded by people but feel utterly alone, in the quiet yearning that whispers through your dreams. This is the language of your soul, and today I want to help you remember how to speak it fluently. Carl Jung once wrote, "Your visions become clear when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And perhaps that's what this conversation is really about. Not learning something new, but awakening to something that's always been there, waiting patiently for you to turn inward and listen. There's a part of you that remembers who you were before the world taught you to be anyone else. A part that holds the blueprint of your authentic self, untouched by the opinions of others, unburdened by the weight of expectations. This is your inner essence, and it's been trying to communicate with you through every moment of restlessness, every surge of unexplained sadness, every flash of joy. That feels too big for the space you've learned to occupy. Today I want to share 4 sacred messages that this deeper part of you has been waiting to hear. These aren't just words. They're keys that unlock doors within your psyche that may have been closed for years, decades, or perhaps your entire life. They're invitations to come home to yourself. But before we begin this journey together, I want you to know that healing isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering what was never broken in the first place. It's about learning to speak the language of your soul so fluently that you can hear its whispers even in the loudest rooms. If this resonates with you, if you feel that familiar stirring that says, "Yes, this is what I've been searching for," then I invite you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because what we're about to explore together isn't just content. It's a conversation with the deepest parts of yourself. And every person who joins this community is someone who's ready to listen to their soul's native language. There's a wound that many of us carry, so common it's almost invisible, yet so deep it shapes how we move through the world. It's the wound of being told, directly or indirectly, that our sensitivity is a weakness, that our emotional depth is too much, that our capacity to feel is something to be managed rather than celebrated. Maybe you remember the first time someone told you to toughen up. Maybe you were 5 years old crying because a butterfly died, and instead of being held in your grief, you were told to get over it. Maybe you were a teenager, overwhelmed by the injustice you saw in the world, and instead of being supported in your compassion, you were told you were too dramatic. Or perhaps it was subtler. Maybe you grew up in a household where emotions were treated like weather, unpredictable, unwelcome, something to be endured rather than explored. Maybe you learned that love was conditional on your ability to be easy, that acceptance required you to dim your inner light to make others comfortable. Jung understood this deeply. He wrote about what he called the wounded healer, the idea that our greatest gifts often emerge from our deepest wounds. Your sensitivity, that quality that the world may have taught you to hide, is actually your soul's way of staying connected to the truth of life. Think about it. Who notices when someone is hurting? The sensitive person. Who feels the energy shift in a room when tension arrives? The sensitive person. Who can't walk past injustice without feeling it in their bones? The sensitive person. Your sensitivity isn't a flaw in your design, it's a feature. But here's what happens when we're taught to suppress this gift. We don't just lose our sensitivity to pain, we lose our sensitivity to beauty, to joy, to the subtle magic that flows through ordinary moments. We become emotionally color-blind, seeing the world in muted tones instead of the full spectrum of experience. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're sitting with your younger self, the one who felt everything so deeply that it sometimes hurt to exist. What would you say to them? Would you tell them to feel less, or would you tell them that their heart is perfectly calibrated to perceive truths that others miss? There's a practice I want to share with you, something Jung called holding the tension of opposites. Instead of trying to resolve the conflict between your sensitivity and the world's demands for emotional toughness, what if you held both truths simultaneously? What if you said, "I am sensitive, and this is my strength. I live in a world that sometimes doesn't understand sensitivity, and I can navigate this with wisdom." This isn't about becoming invulnerable. It's about becoming discerning. It's about learning to distinguish between empathy and absorption, between feeling deeply and drowning in feeling. It's about understanding that your emotional depth is a gift that needs boundaries, not a problem that needs solving. Here's an exercise that can help. Each morning, place your hand on your heart and say, "I honor my sensitivity. I honor my capacity to feel. I honor the way my soul speaks through my emotions." And then ask yourself, how can I honor this gift today while also honoring my need for peace? Sometimes the answer might be to limit your exposure to certain news or social media. Sometimes it might be to spend time in nature, allowing your sensitivity to attune to the healing rhythms of the earth. Sometimes it might be to express your feelings through art, music, or writing, giving your emotions a creative outlet instead of keeping them trapped inside. Your sensitivity is not a burden you must bear. It's a language you must learn to speak fluently. And when you do, you'll discover that the world doesn't need fewer sensitive people. It needs more people who've learned to wield their sensitivity as the superpower it truly is. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from wearing masks for so long that you forget what your real face looks like. It's the tiredness that settles into your bones when you've spent years being who you think you should be instead of who you actually are. Jung called this the persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the world. He wasn't against the persona, he understood its necessity. We all need to adapt to different situations, to be professional at work, considerate with strangers, appropriate in various settings. But the problem arises when the mask becomes a prison, when we become so identified with our personas that we lose touch with our authentic selves. Maybe you know this feeling. Maybe you've spent so long being the good daughter, the reliable employee, the strong friend, that you've forgotten who you are when nobody's watching. Maybe you've become so skilled at reading rooms and adjusting your personality to fit that you've lost track of what you actually like, what you actually want, what you actually believe. There's a moment in every person's life when they stand at a crossroads. One path leads toward continued performance, toward the safety of approval, toward the familiar territory of being who others expect you to be. The other path leads toward authenticity, toward the unknown territory of being yourself, even when, especially when that self doesn't match anyone's expectations. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, not who you think you should be. It's not about rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's about integration. It's about bringing all the parts of yourself, the acceptable ones and the ones you've been hiding, into conscious awareness and choosing to live from that wholeness. But here's the thing about authenticity. It's not a destination, it's a practice. It's not about finding your true self once and for all. It's about choosing moment by moment to be real instead of perfect, to be honest instead of impressive, to be vulnerable instead of invulnerable. And yes, it's scary, because authenticity requires us to risk rejection, disappointment, the uncomfortable possibility that not everyone will like who we really are. But here's what I've learned. The people who don't like your authentic self were never really your people anyway. And the people who do like your authentic self, they become your home. There's a beautiful paradox here. The more willing you are to be disliked for who you truly are, the more deeply you'll be loved by those who matter. The more you risk being seen as imperfect, the more perfect connections you'll attract. The more you dare to be yourself, the more permission you give others to be themselves. I want to share a practice with you. Tonight, when you're alone, ask yourself, if I knew I couldn't fail, if I knew I'd be accepted no matter what, how would I show up differently in the world? Don't think about it. Feel into it. What would you wear? How would you speak? What would you create? What would you say no to? What would you say yes to? Write down whatever comes up, no matter how silly or unrealistic it seems, because buried in those answers are clues to who you really are beneath all the layers of conditioning and expectation. Then choose one small way to honor that authentic self tomorrow. Maybe it's wearing a color you love but never dare to wear. Maybe it's sharing an opinion you usually keep to yourself. Maybe it's saying no to something you don't want to do, or yes to something that excites you. The path to authenticity isn't about dramatic transformation. It's about small, consistent acts of self-honoring. It's about learning to trust that who you are is enough, that your real self is worth the risk of being seen. Jung believed that the goal of life wasn't to become someone else, but to become who you've always been beneath the surface. Your authentic self isn't something you need to create, it's something you need to uncover. And every time you choose truth over performance, vulnerability over protection, authenticity over approval, you're excavating another layer of who you truly are. The world doesn't need another perfect person. It needs another real person. It needs your particular brand of weird, your specific flavor of genius, your unique way of seeing and being and loving. It needs you to stop apologizing for who you are and start celebrating the magnificent, irreplaceable human being you came here to be. There's a story that Jung used to tell about a cracked pot. Every day this pot would carry water from the stream to the house, but because of its crack, it would lose half the water along the way. The pot felt ashamed, useless, broken. But what the pot didn't realize was that along the path where the water leaked, the most beautiful flowers grew. Maybe you know what it feels like to be that cracked pot. Maybe you've spent years feeling ashamed of your wounds, your struggles, your imperfections. Maybe you've looked at others who seem to have it all together and wondered why you're the one who's broken, why you're the one who leaks. But here's what I want you to understand. Your wounds are not evidence of your failure. They're evidence of your humanity. They're proof that you've lived, that you've felt, that you've been brave enough to open your heart to a world that sometimes breaks it. Jung spoke about what he called the wounded healer, the idea that our greatest capacity to help others often emerges from our own deepest pain. Not because we're qualified to fix anyone else, but because we've learned to sit with suffering without being destroyed by it. We've learned to find meaning in the meaningless, to discover light in the darkness, to alchemize pain into wisdom. Think about the people who've impacted your life most profoundly. Were they the ones who had everything figured out, who'd never struggled, who'd never been broken? Or were they the ones who'd been through something and came out the other side with their hearts still open, their spirits still gentle, their capacity for compassion deepened by their own experience with pain? Your wounds are not your identity, but they are part of your story. And when you learn to hold them with compassion instead of shame, when you stop trying to hide them and start learning from them, they become sources of strength rather than sources of suffering. But this process, this transformation of wounds into wisdom, it's not automatic. It requires what Jung called active imagination, the ability to engage consciously with your own psyche, to dialogue with your pain instead of running from it. Here's a practice that can help. Tonight, when you're quiet and alone, imagine your wound as a character in a story. What does it look like? How does it move? What does it want to tell you? Don't try to fix it or change it. Just listen. Ask it. What did you teach me? What strength did you give me? What wisdom did you reveal? You might be surprised by what emerges. Maybe your anxiety taught you empathy. Maybe your depression taught you depth. Maybe your heartbreak taught you how to love more fully. Maybe your trauma taught you resilience you didn't know you possessed. I'm not suggesting that you should be grateful for your pain. That's not what this is about. I'm suggesting that you can be grateful for who you've become because of your ability to transform pain into wisdom, wounds into strength, suffering into compassion. There's a reason why the most beautiful art comes from the most broken places. There's a reason why the most powerful music is born from the deepest pain. There's a reason why the most profound insights emerge from the darkest nights of the soul. Not because suffering is good, but because consciousness is alchemical. It has the power to transform anything into something meaningful. Your wounds don't define you, but they have refined you. They've carved out spaces in your heart where compassion can live. They've created depths in your soul where wisdom can grow. They've given you a quality of presence that can only come from someone who's learned to be with pain without being consumed by it. And here's the beautiful truth. When you learn to hold your own wounds with compassion, you naturally develop the capacity to hold others' wounds with compassion too. When you stop being ashamed of your own struggles, you stop judging others for theirs. When you learn to see your own pain as a teacher rather than an enemy, you become a source of healing for others who are still in the darkness. This doesn't mean you need to become a therapist or a healer in the traditional sense. It means you become a human being who can sit with suffering, your own and others, without needing to fix it, change it, or make it go away. You become someone who can offer presence instead of solutions, compassion instead of advice, understanding instead of judgment. The world is full of people who are hurting, who are struggling, who are trying to make sense of their pain. They don't need you to have all the answers. They need you to have walked through the darkness and emerged with your heart still open. They need you to be proof that wounds can heal, that pain can transform, that broken things can become beautiful. Your wounds are not your weakness. They're your credentials. They're proof that you've lived fully, loved deeply, and survived what once seemed unsurvivable. They're evidence of your resilience, your strength, your capacity to find meaning in the midst of chaos. So stop hiding your scars. Stop apologizing for your struggles. Stop pretending you're something other than a beautifully human being who's learned to transform pain into wisdom. The world needs your particular brand of healing, your specific understanding of what it means to be broken and whole at the same time. There's a part of you that never grew up, not in the way that's childish or immature, but in the way that's eternally curious, endlessly creative, completely present to wonder. This is your inner child, and chances are they've been waiting a very long time for someone to listen to what they have to say. Jung believed that within each of us lives what he called the eternal child, the part of our psyche that remains forever young, forever connected to the magic and mystery of existence. This isn't the traumatized child who needs healing, though that's important too. This is the divine child who sees the world with fresh eyes, who believes in possibilities, who knows how to play. But somewhere along the way, most of us learned to silence this voice. We learned that being an adult meant being serious, responsible, practical. We learned that wonder was childish, that playfulness was unproductive, that dreaming was a waste of time. We learned to prioritize what we should do over what we wanted to do, what made sense over what made us come alive. And in doing so, we lost touch with one of our most powerful sources of wisdom, creativity, and joy. Your inner child isn't just a metaphor, it's a real part of your psyche that holds keys to your authentic self. It remembers what you loved before you learned to love what you were supposed to love. It remembers what excited you before you learned to be excited by what was expected to excite you. It remembers who you were before you learned to be who you thought you should be. Here's a question that might unlock something profound in you. What did you love to do as a child that you've stopped doing as an adult? What activities made you lose track of time, made you forget to eat, made you completely absorbed in the present moment? Was it drawing, writing stories, building things with your hands, singing at the top of your lungs, dancing like nobody was watching, exploring nature, asking endless questions about how the world works? Whatever it was, that activity was a doorway to your soul. It was your inner child's way of expressing their essential nature, their unique way of engaging with the world. And chances are, when you stopped doing that thing, you lost touch with a part of yourself that was vital to your well-being. But here's the beautiful truth. Your inner child is still there, waiting patiently for you to remember them. They're not gone. They're just dormant. And all it takes is one small act of playfulness, one moment of wonder, one decision to prioritize joy over productivity, to wake them up. This doesn't mean you need to abandon your adult responsibilities or regress to childhood. It means you need to integrate the wisdom of your inner child with the capabilities of your adult self. It means learning to be both mature and playful, both responsible and spontaneous, both grounded and full of wonder. Jung called this process holding the tension of opposites. Instead of choosing between being an adult or being childlike, you learn to be both. You learn to bring the curiosity of a child to adult problems, the playfulness of a child to adult relationships, the wonder of a child to adult experiences. Here's a practice that can help you reconnect with your inner child. Set aside 1 hour this week, just 1 hour, to do something purely for the joy of it. Not because it's productive, not because it's good for you, not because it serves any purpose other than bringing you delight. Maybe it's coloring in a coloring book. Maybe it's dancing to music you loved as a teenager. Maybe it's building something with your hands, going on a nature walk with no destination in mind, or having a conversation with your pet. Maybe it's writing a story, taking photos of interesting shadows, or trying a new recipe just because it sounds fun. Pay attention to what happens in your body when you engage in this activity. Notice if your breathing changes, if your shoulders relax, if something in your chest opens up. This is your inner child coming alive, remembering what it feels like to be fully present to joy. And here's what might surprise you. When you make space for your inner child's voice, you'll often find that they have profound wisdom to offer. They might remind you of dreams you've forgotten, passions you've abandoned, parts of yourself you've been neglecting. They might show you where you've become too serious, too rigid, too focused on outcomes instead of experience. Your inner child is not a distraction from your adult life. They're an essential part of living that life fully. They're the part of you that knows how to be present, how to find magic in ordinary moments, how to approach challenges with curiosity instead of fear. The world needs adults who haven't forgotten how to wonder, who haven't lost their capacity for play, who haven't abandoned their connection to joy. It needs people who can bring the fresh perspective of a child to the complex problems of adult life, who can ask the innocent questions that reveal profound truths. So listen to your inner child. Ask them what they want to create, what they want to explore, what they want to celebrate. And then, this is the crucial part, take them seriously. Make space for their voice in your daily life. Let them guide you back to the parts of yourself that you've been missing. Because your inner child doesn't just deserve a voice. They deserve to be heard, honored, and integrated into the full expression of who you are. They deserve to be part of the conversation about how you want to live, what you want to create, what you want to experience in this brief and precious life. Now I want to pause here and ask you something that might feel uncomfortable, but I believe it's essential. I want you to really sit with this question, not just intellectually, but emotionally, somatically, in your whole being. Here it is. What if the person you've been trying so hard to become is actually preventing you from becoming who you truly are? Think about it. What if all the self-improvement, all the goal setting, all the strategies for becoming a better version of yourself are actually moving you further away from your authentic self? What if the problem isn't that you're not enough, but that you're trying to be too much of what others expect, too much of what you think you should be, too much of anything except exactly who you are right now? This question haunts me because I see it everywhere. People who are exhausted from trying to optimize themselves, who are spiritually depleted from constantly working on themselves, who have turned their own lives into improvement projects instead of experiences to be lived. Jung had a radical idea about this. He believed that the goal of psychological development wasn't to become a better person, but to become a whole person, not improved, but integrated, not perfect, but authentic, not fixed, but complete. What if the journey isn't about adding more to yourself, but about removing what was never yours to begin with? What if it's about peeling away the layers of conditioning, expectation, and performance until you discover the person who was always there, waiting beneath the surface? I want you to sit with this question for a moment. Really feel into it. What if you stopped trying to become someone else and started being curious about who you already are? What if you stopped trying to fix yourself and started exploring yourself? What if you stopped trying to improve yourself and started accepting yourself? This isn't about complacency or giving up on growth. It's about recognizing that true transformation happens not through force, but through acceptance. Not through rejection of who you are, but through embracing who you are so fully that you naturally evolve into who you're meant to become. Take a moment right now to consider, what would your life look like if you stopped trying to be anyone other than exactly who you are? What would you do differently? What would you stop doing? What would you start honoring about yourself that you've been trying to change? I'm genuinely curious about your answer to this question, because I believe that within your response lies the key to your freedom, your joy, your authentic path forward. So I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What came up for you when you really sat with this question? What did you discover about yourself? As we near the end of our time together, I want to leave you with something that Jung wrote toward the end of his life. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who you think you should be, not who others expect you to be, not who you were yesterday or who you might become tomorrow, but who you truly are right now, in this moment, in all your imperfect, beautiful, completely human complexity. This journey we've taken together today, toward seeing your sensitivity as strength, your authenticity as courage, your wounds as wisdom, your inner child as guide. This is really a journey home to yourself. It's a remembering of who you were before the world taught you to be anyone else. And the beautiful truth is that this journey never ends. Every day offers new opportunities to choose authenticity over performance, self-compassion over self-judgment, presence over productivity. Every moment is a chance to listen to the quiet voice of your soul beneath the noise of everyday life. But here's what I want you to remember. You don't have to take this journey alone. You don't have to figure it all out by yourself. You don't have to heal in isolation or grow in silence. There's a whole community of people who are on this same path, who understand the courage it takes to be real in a world that often rewards pretense. If this conversation has touched something in you, if you've felt that familiar stirring of recognition, of coming home to yourself, then I invite you to become part of this community. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and join us as we continue to explore what it means to live authentically, to heal consciously, to grow with wisdom and compassion. Because the work of becoming who you truly are, it's not solitary work, it's community work. It's the work of witnessing each other's journeys, of offering support when the path gets difficult, of celebrating each other's courage to be real. Your presence here, your willingness to look within, your commitment to your own healing and growth, it matters. Not just for you, but for everyone whose life you touch. When you do the work of becoming authentic, you give others permission to do the same. When you heal your own wounds, you help heal the collective wounds we all carry. When you listen to your own soul, you remind others that they have souls worth listening to. The world needs what you have to offer, not the polished version of yourself, not the perfect version, but the real version. The version that's been shaped by struggle and strengthened by survival. The version that's learned to transform pain into wisdom, wounds into compassion, fear into courage. So keep going, keep listening, keep choosing authenticity over approval, vulnerability over invulnerability, presence over perfection. Keep speaking the language of your soul, even when, especially when, it's the only language that makes sense. And remember, you are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too much or too little. You are exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn, becoming exactly who you're meant to become. The journey home to yourself is the most important journey you'll ever take. And every step of the way, your soul is whispering, yes, this is the way. This is the path. This is how you become who you truly are. If this conversation has touched your soul, if you felt that familiar stirring of coming home to yourself, then I invite you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters and your journey matters. Let's walk this path together, supporting each other as we remember who we truly are. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. Thank you for your courage, your openness, your willingness to look within. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue this conversation about what it means to live authentically, love deeply, and heal consciously. Until then, be gentle with yourself. Be patient with your process, and remember, you are enough exactly as you are right now.